The mystery of thoughts and the illusion of the thinker. Have you ever noticed how thoughts seem to appear out of nowhere, almost like uninvited guests at a gathering? One moment, you're fully engaged in a task, and the next, your mind has wandered off, replaying an old argument, planning dinner, or worrying about something that might never happen. It's a common experience, yet one that rarely prompts us to ask a deeper question. Where do these thoughts come from? And more importantly, if you're not consciously creating them, then who is? This question touches on one of the most profound mysteries of human consciousness. For centuries, philosophers and spiritual seekers alike have pondered the origin of thoughts and the nature of the mind. Yet, Buddhism provides an extraordinary and liberating answer to this riddle. According to the Buddhist teachings, thoughts do not emerge from a permanent, autonomous self. Instead, they arise as a result of dependent origination, pratitya, a fundamental principle in Buddhism that explains how all phenomena, including thoughts, arise due to causes and conditions. Dependent origination teaches that everything we experience is interconnected and conditioned by past events, sensory impressions, and subconscious tendencies. Thoughts don't arise randomly or independently. They emerge from a web of experiences, emotions, and habits that shape our mental landscape. For example, a fleeting smell might trigger a childhood memory, which in turn sparks a cascade of related thoughts. Similarly, an unresolved emotional experience can resurface as a seemingly random thought, creating a cycle of worry or regret. To understand this more deeply, consider a simple experiment. Try closing your eyes for 10 seconds and attempt to predict your next thought. Did you succeed? Most likely, you didn't. Instead, a thought arose spontaneously, without your conscious effort. This exercise reveals a startling truth. We don't consciously create most of our thoughts. They emerge unbidden, like ripples spreading across the surface of a pond after a stone has been thrown. This realization challenges our conventional belief that there's a thinker controlling the mind. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, he didn't just calm his mind, he closely observed its activity. According to the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha noticed how thoughts arose and dissolved, much like waves rising and falling on the surface of the ocean. What he discovered was revolutionary. There was no permanent self orchestrating these mental events. This profound insight led to the realization of anatta, no self, the understanding that what we perceive as a fixed, unchanging I is merely an illusion created by the continuous flow of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. To better grasp this concept, imagine the mind as a vast ocean, with thoughts being the waves that arise and dissolve on its surface. Waves may appear distinct, but they are inseparable from the ocean itself. Similarly, thoughts arise and fall within the mind, giving the impression of a solid self. But just as no single wave can claim to be the ocean, no thought or cluster of thoughts constitutes a permanent thinker. The notion of an independent self that controls thoughts is as illusory as mistaking waves for the ocean. Modern neuroscience echoes these ancient insights. Studies have shown that much of our mental activity occurs below the level of conscious awareness, governed by automatic processes within the brain. Researchers studying the default mode network, DMN, have discovered that when the mind is at rest, it generates spontaneous thoughts and mental chatter. This activity happens independently of conscious intention, reinforcing the idea that thoughts arise without the need for a permanent controller. If thoughts arise spontaneously, why do we so often identify with them? The answer lies in our deep-seated habit of attaching to thoughts and believing that they define us. From an early age, we are conditioned to think of ourselves as the authors of our thoughts and the narrators of our inner stories. Descartes' famous dictum, "I think, therefore I am," encapsulates this belief. But this attachment to thoughts creates an illusion of control, leading to endless cycles of mental chatter, emotional turmoil, and a false sense of self. Buddhism teaches that clinging to thoughts reinforces the illusion of a separate self. When we identify with our thoughts, we create a narrative that fuels attachment and suffering. We mistake passing mental events for an enduring identity, building a fragile sense of self around constantly shifting thoughts and emotions. This mistaken identification binds us to habitual patterns of reactivity, making it difficult to break free from mental agitation. However, liberation from this cycle is possible. Mindfulness, sati, offers a way to step out of the whirlwind of thoughts and see them for what they truly are: impermanent, conditioned phenomena that arise and pass away. When we observe thoughts with non-judgmental awareness, we create a space between the mind's activity and our sense of self. This space allows us to witness thoughts without being swept away by them, gradually loosening the grip of identification. Imagine watching clouds drift across the sky. You don't cling to them or try to control their movement. You simply observe them pass. Similarly, when you cultivate mindfulness, you develop the ability to watch thoughts come and go without attachment. This shift in perspective is profoundly freeing. It allows you to experience thoughts as transient events rather than defining aspects of who you are. Recognizing that you are not your thoughts opens the door to true inner freedom. When you no longer identify with the mental chatter, you discover a deeper awareness that lies beyond thought, a spacious, clear, and silent presence that observes everything without attachment. This awareness is not another thought or concept. It is the underlying ground of consciousness, ever present and unaffected by the comings and goings of the mind. In the upcoming exploration, we will delve deeper into the nature of the self, investigate how attachment to thoughts creates suffering, and discover practical ways to cultivate mindfulness and inner clarity. This journey leads to a profound realization. Freedom arises not by stopping thoughts, but by seeing them for what they truly are. The monkey mind and the illusion of control. In Buddhist teachings, the mind is often likened to a monkey mind, restless, impulsive, and constantly jumping from one thought to another. Just like a monkey swinging from branch to branch without rest, our thoughts move unpredictably, dragging our attention in countless directions. One moment, you're planning dinner, and the next, you're worrying about an upcoming deadline or replaying a past conversation, analyzing what you could have said differently. This mental chatter seems endless, creating the illusion that there's a self behind the scenes orchestrating this activity. But what if this self is just another thought, impermanent, fleeting, and no more solid than the thoughts it tries to control? The idea that there's a permanent self directing mental activity is deeply ingrained in our experience. We think, I am planning, I am worrying, or I am judging, and these thoughts seem to reinforce the belief that there's an enduring I behind them. However, Buddhism challenges this assumption by pointing out that thoughts, like all phenomena, are impermanent and conditioned. They arise and pass away due to causes and conditions, not because a permanent self generates them. To better understand this, imagine a river that's constantly flowing. The water is never the same from one moment to the next. Similarly, mental activity is in a state of constant flux, where thoughts arise and dissolve, replaced by new ones. Yet, we mistakenly perceive this ever-changing flow as a cohesive self. This illusion creates a sense of control, a belief that we can direct or stop our thoughts at will. But when we try to exert control over our mental activity, we quickly realize how futile this effort can be. Trying to stop the river, the futility of controlling thoughts. Attempting to control your thoughts is like trying to stop a river with your bare hands. The harder you try, the more turbulent the water becomes. This analogy perfectly captures the struggle of trying to suppress or control thoughts. When we attempt to push away unwanted thoughts or force ourselves to focus, we inadvertently strengthen the mental resistance, making those thoughts even more persistent. Consider how often people say, "I just need to stop thinking about this," only to find that the very act of trying to stop makes the thoughts even louder. This paradox highlights a fundamental truth. Resisting thoughts gives them more power. When we engage in an internal battle to control or suppress thoughts, we create inner tension, which fuels the very mental activity we're trying to escape. The Buddha recognized this struggle and offered a radically different approach: mindfulness study. Instead of trying to control thoughts, mindfulness encourages us to observe them with non-judgmental awareness. By stepping back and witnessing thoughts as they arise and pass, we create a sense of space between awareness and mental chatter. This shift in perspective transforms how we relate to our thoughts, allowing us to see them not as threats or distractions, but as natural phenomena arising and dissolving like waves on the surface of the mind. The power of mindfulness, observing without attachment. The Satipatthana Sutta, a foundational text on mindfulness, provides clear guidance on cultivating this non-judgmental awareness. It teaches practitioners to observe their thoughts as passing events, much like clouds drifting across the sky. When we watch thoughts in this way, we begin to notice their impermanent nature. A thought about the past arises, lingers for a moment, and then dissolves, only to be replaced by another thought about the future. This continuous stream of thoughts loses its grip when viewed from a place of detached awareness. Mindfulness invites us to become the observer rather than the participant in the drama of the mind. By watching thoughts without attachment or judgment, we begin to see them for what they truly are: temporary and conditioned events. Over time, this practice creates a profound shift in our relationship with the mind. We realize that we don't have to identify with every thought that arises. Instead, we can allow thoughts to come and go, like leaves floating downstream, without clinging to them or being swept away by their currents. This shift from identification to observation has a transformative effect. When we're no longer entangled in our thoughts, we experience a newfound sense of mental freedom. We begin to see that thoughts don't define us, nor do they have the power to control us. Instead, we gain the ability to respond to thoughts with clarity and calmness, rather than reacting impulsively to them. Modern science validates ancient wisdom. Interestingly, modern neuroscience is now validating what the Buddha discovered over 2,500 years ago. Research conducted by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, has shown that regular mindfulness practice can literally reshape the brain. Studies have demonstrated that mindfulness strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive control and emotional regulation. At the same time, it reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's center for processing fear and emotional reactivity. Through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, mindfulness practices can weaken habitual patterns of overthinking and reactivity. This means that by observing thoughts without attachment, we're not only cultivating inner peace, but also rewiring the brain to respond more calmly and effectively to life's challenges. Letting go of the illusion of control. When we let go of the illusion that we can control our thoughts, we discover a deeper truth. Freedom lies not in stopping thoughts, but in changing our relationship to them. The goal of mindfulness is not to eliminate thoughts or achieve a blank mind. Instead, it's about cultivating the ability to observe thoughts with equanimity, allowing them to arise and pass without interference. This practice dissolves the illusion of control and reveals a spacious awareness that remains untouched by the ever-changing stream of thoughts. In this space, we realize that the monkey mind isn't something to be tamed or silenced. It's something to be understood and witnessed with compassion. As we continue to cultivate this awareness, we develop a profound sense of inner freedom, where thoughts no longer dictate our emotions or actions. Buddhism teaches that true peace arises not from controlling the mind, but from seeing through the illusion of control and resting in the stillness that lies beyond thought. When we stop trying to hold back the river, we realize that the flow of thoughts doesn't have to be a source of suffering. Instead, it becomes an ever-changing landscape that we can observe with calm and clarity. This understanding is the key to transcending the restless monkey mind and discovering the boundless freedom that lies at the heart of awareness. Searching for the thinker, the empty center. One of the most deeply ingrained assumptions in human experience is the belief that there's a thinker behind our thoughts, a permanent, autonomous self that controls and directs mental activity. This assumption creates a sense of identity that gives us the impression of being the author of our thoughts, decisions, and experiences. However, the Buddha's profound insight into anatta, no self, challenges this belief, revealing that what we perceive as a fixed, controlling self is nothing more than an illusion. In daily life, we often speak of ourselves as the ones who think. Phrases like, "I am thinking," "I am worrying," or "I am deciding" reinforce the idea that there's a central entity orchestrating our mental activities. But when we investigate this assumption more closely, we begin to see that thoughts, like all phenomena, arise and dissolve due to causes and conditions. The Buddhist teachings invite us to explore this phenomenon more deeply, to look beyond surface appearances and question whether this thinker actually exists. Kamaka's search for the self. The story of Kamaka, a devoted monk, beautifully illustrates this inquiry. Kamaka set out to investigate the nature of the self by examining the 5 aggregates, Pankakanda, which comprise all human experience. Form, Rupa, the physical body and its material properties. Feelings, Vedana, sensations that arise from contact with the senses, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Perceptions, Sana, the process of recognizing and labeling experiences. Mental formations, Sakar, thoughts, intentions, and mental habits. Consciousness, via the awareness that arises through contact with the senses. Kamaka meticulously examined each of these aggregates, searching for a permanent, unchanging self that existed independently of these processes. But no matter how deeply he investigated, he found that none of the aggregates could be identified as the self. Each aggregate was impermanent, conditioned, and devoid of any inherent essence. Even when Kamaka turned his attention to the thought, "I am thinking," he realized that this, too, was just another mental formation, Sakar, a conditioned mental event arising due to causes and conditions. His realization shattered the illusion of a fixed self and brought him profound peace and liberation. This insight highlights a fundamental truth in Buddhist philosophy. The I that we assume to be in control is merely a mental construct, not an enduring reality. The illusion of a permanent self. The Anattalakkhana Sutta, one of the Buddha's earliest discourses, echoes this teaching. In this sutta, the Buddha directly addresses the illusion of self by explaining that each of the 5 aggregates is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and devoid of a permanent essence. The Buddha states, "This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself." These words serve as a powerful reminder that what we take to be me or mine is nothing more than a collection of ever-changing processes. When we search for the thinker behind our thoughts, we discover only empty phenomena, thoughts arising and passing away, conditions changing, and awareness simply observing these fluctuations. This realization can be unsettling at first because it directly challenges the deeply ingrained belief that there's a solid, enduring I that experiences and controls life. However, upon closer examination, we see that there's no permanent entity orchestrating the mind's activity. What appears to be a self is just a momentary coming together of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, all conditioned by past experiences and present circumstances. Empty processes, not a thinker. When we engage in this exploration, we begin to see that thoughts arise independently, often without our conscious intention. Just as ripples form on the surface of a pond when a pebble is dropped, thoughts arise when conditions are present. But who is dropping the pebble? Upon investigation, we discover that there is no entity initiating these thoughts, only an intricate web of causes and conditions giving rise to mental activity. This process becomes even clearer during meditation. When we sit in stillness and observe the mind, we see thoughts appear, linger for a moment, and then dissolve, only to be replaced by another thought. There's no thinker directing this process, only awareness witnessing the ebb and flow of mental phenomena. By observing this unfolding with mindful attention, we gradually loosen the grip of identification with our thoughts. we begin to see that the idea of a permanent self behind the thoughts is just another thought, an illusion that arises from conditioned patterns of perception. As this understanding deepens, the mind naturally becomes less attached to the narrative of a controlling I, leading to greater inner freedom and peace. The liberation found in seeing through the illusion, recognizing that there's no permanent self behind our thoughts, opens the door to profound liberation. When we stop identifying with the mental narrative of a controlling I, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. The endless cycle of craving, aversion, and attachment begins to unravel as we see that the self we cling to is merely a collection of impermanent processes. This insight does not lead to nihilism or detachment from life, but to a deeper engagement with reality. When we understand that thoughts and emotions arise and pass like waves on the surface of the mind, we learn to meet life with greater compassion and equanimity. We no longer feel the need to defend or protect an illusory self, allowing us to respond to life's challenges with clarity and balance. In the absence of a controlling thinker, what remains is pure awareness, silent, spacious, and free. This awareness doesn't cling to thoughts or resist experiences. It simply witnesses the unfolding of life with unwavering presence. As we continue to deepen this understanding, we move closer to the heart of Buddhist liberation, freedom from the illusion of a separate self and the profound peace that arises from seeing things as they truly are. Beyond thoughts, discovering pure awareness. Beneath the endless stream of thoughts and mental chatter lies something deeper, a silent, unwavering awareness. This awareness is not another thought or concept. It is the vast, open space in which thoughts arise, linger briefly, and then dissolve. Like the sky that remains unchanged regardless of the shifting clouds. This pure awareness serves as the background of all mental activity. In everyday life, however, this awareness is often obscured by the turbulence of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. We become so entangled in the content of our minds that we lose sight of the spaciousness that holds it all. But Buddhism points to a profound truth. Beyond this mental noise is an awareness that is always present, silent, clear, and unaffected by the constant movement of thoughts. Recognizing and resting in this awareness is the key to experiencing true freedom. Jhana and deep meditative absorption, uncovering spacious awareness. To cultivate this profound awareness, the Buddha emphasized the practice of jhana, a state of deep meditative absorption that unifies and stills the mind. In jhana, the restless waves of thought subside, allowing the mind to settle into a state of profound stillness and clarity. Through this stillness, practitioners begin to experience the vast, unchanging awareness that lies beneath the surface of ordinary mental activity. Jhana is not merely about achieving a blank mind or suppressing thoughts. Instead, it involves deepening one's concentration, samadhi, to such a degree that the mind becomes fully absorbed in the present moment. As distractions fall away, what remains is a vivid, direct experience of pure awareness. Even brief moments of this mental clarity can reveal the spacious nature of the mind, offering a glimpse of the freedom that arises when we are no longer entangled in the web of thoughts. Anuruddha's journey. A powerful example of this practice is reflected in the story of Anuruddha, one of the Buddha's most devoted disciples. Anuruddha struggled with distraction during his early meditation practice. Despite his best efforts, his mind continued to wander, preventing him from deepening his concentration. Recognizing his struggle, the Buddha advised him to shift his focus, not to fight or suppress his thoughts, but to observe them with patient, non-judgmental awareness. Following this guidance, Anuruddha began to cultivate a more mindful approach to his practice. Instead of trying to control his thoughts, he observed them with equanimity, allowing them to arise and pass without interference. Over time, this simple yet profound shift allowed Anuruddha to enter deeper states of meditative absorption. His mind became effortlessly still, and he experienced the expansive clarity that lies beyond thoughts. Through this practice, Anuruddha developed not only profound concentration, but also deep insight into the nature of awareness itself. The sky and clouds metaphor, understanding awareness. A powerful metaphor used in Buddhist teachings to illustrate this awareness is that of the sky and clouds. The mind is often likened to a vast, open sky, boundless, spacious, and unchanging. Thoughts, emotions, and sensations, on the other hand, are like clouds drifting across this sky. Sometimes the sky is filled with thick, stormy clouds, representing moments of emotional turmoil or mental confusion. At other times, the sky is clear and open, reflecting moments of peace and clarity. But regardless of how the clouds shift and change, the sky itself remains unaffected. It doesn't cling to the clouds, nor does it resist their passing. It simply holds them, allowing them to come and go. This metaphor perfectly captures the relationship between pure awareness and mental phenomena. Awareness is like the sky, vast and unchanging, while thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are like clouds that arise and pass. When we mistakenly identify with the clouds, we become entangled in their movements, reacting to them as if they define us. But when we recognize ourselves as the sky, we gain a profound sense of freedom. We see that thoughts and emotions are temporary phenomena, not ultimate realities. Recognizing spacious awareness, the gateway to freedom. When we begin to see our minds in this way, we cultivate a sense of spaciousness that allows us to step back from the turbulence of thoughts and emotions. Instead of being swept away by every passing cloud, we can rest in the vast openness of awareness itself. This shift in perspective is transformative. It allows us to engage with life's challenges from a place of calm, clarity, and wisdom rather than being driven by habitual reactivity. Mindfulness, sati, plays a crucial role in this process. Through consistent practice, mindfulness trains the mind to observe thoughts and emotions without attachment or judgment. By cultivating this detached observation, we gradually weaken the grip of identification with our mental chatter. As thoughts come and go, we begin to recognize that we are not the thoughts themselves. We are the awareness that watches them. In moments of deep mindfulness, this spacious awareness becomes vividly clear. Thoughts lose their weight, emotions lose their intensity, and what remains is a quiet, open presence. This presence is not something we need to create or cultivate. It is already here, beneath the noise of the mind. But by turning our attention toward it, we reconnect with the stillness that has always been present. The liberation of dwelling in pure awareness. Discovering this pure awareness brings with it a profound sense of liberation. When we stop identifying with our thoughts, we no longer get caught up in the stories the mind tells. We become less reactive, more compassionate, and more attuned to the present moment. This shift is not about suppressing thoughts or forcing the mind to be still. It's about seeing through the illusion that we are defined by our thoughts and recognizing the boundless space that holds all experiences. This recognition leads to a profound inner freedom, a freedom that allows us to engage with the world fully while remaining rooted in a state of awareness that is beyond the fluctuations of the mind. In this space of spacious awareness, we find refuge from the turbulence of thoughts and emotions, discovering a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. As we continue to deepen this practice, we realize that pure awareness is not something distant or mystical. It is the very essence of our being, the silent witness that has been present all along. When we rest in this awareness, we no longer need to chase after thoughts or resist their arising. We simply abide in the stillness that lies beyond thought, where true freedom and lasting peace reside. Living with this understanding, practical applications. Understanding that you are not your thoughts is not merely an abstract philosophical concept. It is a transformative realization that changes how you experience life. When you stop identifying with the constant stream of mental chatter, you create space between yourself and your thoughts, allowing you to respond to situations with clarity and wisdom rather than react impulsively. This shift isn't about suppressing or controlling thoughts. It's about changing your relationship to them. By observing thoughts as transient phenomena, you cultivate the freedom to engage with life from a place of deeper awareness and compassion. Yoniso manasikara, the power of wise attention. The Buddha emphasized the importance of Yoniso manasikara, often translated as wise attention or skillful reflection. This practice involves paying attention in a way that leads to insight and liberation, rather than getting caught up in habitual patterns of thought and reactivity. Wise attention trains the mind to see thoughts as conditioned events that arise and pass, rather than as reflections of a permanent self. In everyday life, most people approach their thoughts with ayaniso manasikara, unwise attention, which reinforces habitual reactions. When a thought arises, they immediately identify with it, assuming it reflects an inherent truth. For example, a thought like, "I'm not good enough," if left unexamined, triggers feelings of inadequacy and leads to self-defeating behaviors. But through wise attention, you can observe this thought as just a thought, not a statement of reality. Wise attention encourages you to step back and ask, where did this thought come from? Is this thought helpful or harmful? What happens if I simply observe this thought without reacting? By cultivating this habit of inquiry, you disrupt automatic mental patterns and open the door to more conscious, intentional responses. Rather than being dragged along by every passing thought, you develop the capacity to observe thoughts with curiosity and detachment. This shift in perspective weakens the grip of unskillful mental habits and creates the conditions for genuine insight and freedom. Angulimala's transformation, changing your relationship to thoughts. A powerful illustration of the transformative power of changing one's relationship to thoughts can be found in the story of Angulimala. Angulimala was a notorious criminal who terrorized villages and killed countless people. His name, which means garland of fingers, came from the gruesome necklace of severed fingers he wore as a symbol of his conquests. Driven by rage and delusion, Angulimala was consumed by destructive thought patterns that perpetuated his violent actions. However, Angulimala's life took a dramatic turn when he encountered the Buddha. Instead of responding to Angulimala's aggression with fear or condemnation, the Buddha met him with calmness and compassion. Their encounter wasn't about erasing Angulimala's past or denying his actions. Instead, it was about inviting Angulimala to see his thoughts and actions through the lens of awareness and wise attention. The Buddha's presence created a moment of pause, a space in which Angulimala could observe his conditioned mind rather than react blindly to it. In that moment of awareness, Angulimala realized that he was not bound by his thoughts or past behavior. He saw that his actions were driven by deeply ingrained mental patterns that he had never questioned. This realization shattered the illusion that he was permanently defined by his violent past. Through this shift in awareness, Angulimala underwent a profound transformation. He abandoned his life of violence and became a devoted follower of the Buddha. His transformation wasn't the result of erasing his past, but of changing his relationship to his thoughts. He stopped identifying with the mental narratives that had fueled his destructive behavior and began cultivating thoughts rooted in compassion and wisdom. Breaking free from habitual patterns, Angulimala's story serves as a powerful reminder that freedom is not about eliminating thoughts, but about changing how we relate to them. Even the most deeply conditioned patterns of thought can be transformed when viewed with mindful awareness and wise attention. When we stop identifying with habitual mental narratives, we break free from the cycle of automatic reactivity. In daily life, this shift can be applied to countless situations. Consider how often negative or anxious thoughts arise. What if I fail? I'm not good enough. They shouldn't have treated me that way. These thoughts, if left unchecked, generate emotional turmoil and perpetuate suffering. But through wise attention, you can train yourself to observe these thoughts with detachment. You don't need to suppress them or engage with them. You simply acknowledge their presence and allow them to pass, like clouds drifting across the sky. Over time, this practice creates a new mental habit, the habit of awareness. Instead of reacting impulsively to thoughts, you develop the ability to pause, observe, and choose a more skillful response. This shift in awareness opens the door to genuine freedom, where thoughts no longer control your actions or emotions. Practical ways to cultivate wise attention. Bringing wise attention into everyday life requires consistent practice, but the results are transformative. Here are some practical steps to cultivate this awareness. 1. Pause and observe. When a thought arises, pause before reacting. Notice the thought as an event in the mind, not as a reflection of reality. 2. Label the thought. Mentally label the thought as worry, judgment, or fear. This creates distance between you and the thought, weakening its emotional grip. 3. Investigate with curiosity. Ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is it true? What happens if I let it go? This inquiry shifts the mind from reactivity to reflection. 4. Practice non-attachment. Allow thoughts to come and go without clinging to them or pushing them away. Recognize that they are impermanent and do not define you. The freedom of living with awareness. When you consistently practice wise attention, you cultivate a profound shift in how you experience life. You stop being dragged around by your thoughts and emotions, and instead, you respond to life's challenges with clarity, compassion, and wisdom. This transformation is not about achieving a blank mind or suppressing thoughts. It's about seeing through the illusion of a permanent self and resting in the spacious awareness that observes all mental activity. As you deepen this practice, you realize that true freedom arises not by controlling your thoughts, but by changing your relationship to them. This shift empowers you to engage with life from a place of wisdom, compassion, and authentic presence. And as the story of Angulimala reminds us, even the most deeply ingrained patterns can be transformed when met with awareness and wise attention. Practical steps to integrate this wisdom. Bringing the understanding that you are not your thoughts into daily life doesn't require retreating from the world or adopting a monastic lifestyle. Instead, it's about cultivating a different relationship with your thoughts, a relationship characterized by awareness, equanimity, and wise reflection. This shift transforms how you engage with the challenges of life, allowing you to act with greater clarity and compassion. Integrating this wisdom involves practical steps that, when consistently applied, reshape your mental patterns and deepen your awareness. Setting intention, the foundation of mindful action. The first step in living with this understanding is to set a clear intention before engaging with any mental or emotional activity. In Buddhist practice, intention is considered a powerful force that shapes the quality of our actions and thoughts. Yoniso manasikara, wise attention, begins with a conscious commitment to approach situations with clarity, compassion, and awareness. Before entering a difficult conversation, making a decision, or reflecting on a challenging situation, pause and ask yourself, what is my intention in this moment? Am I approaching this situation with the desire to understand or to react? For example, if you're about to have a difficult conversation with a colleague, setting an intention such as, I want to listen with compassion and speak with clarity, shifts your mindset. This simple act primes your mind to engage with the situation consciously, rather than being swept away by habitual reactivity. By setting an intention, you create a mental framework that anchors your attention and cultivates a space for skillful responses. Observing thoughts mindfully, becoming the watcher. Once your intention is set, the next step is to observe your thoughts mindfully. This involves adopting a detached, curious attitude toward your thoughts, like a scientist observing a phenomenon with objectivity and precision. Instead of getting entangled in the content of your thoughts, you cultivate the ability to witness them as passing events. Mindful observation allows you to recognize that thoughts are not ultimate reality. They are conditioned mental events. Thoughts arise due to causes and conditions, much like clouds appearing and disappearing in the sky. By observing your thoughts with detachment, you begin to see their transient nature. When a thought arises, instead of identifying with it, silently note. Thinking. Here's a judgment. There's worry arising. This practice creates distance between you and your thoughts, weakening their grip over your emotions and actions. Over time, this awareness leads to a profound shift where you begin to experience thoughts as mental phenomena, not as reflections of who you are. Creating space for insight, letting stillness guide you. In a world that prizes immediate answers and constant activity, it's easy to fall into the trap of forcing solutions. But true insight often arises in moments of stillness, when the mind is free from grasping and striving. Creating mental space allows deeper understanding to emerge naturally, without interference from habitual thought patterns. When faced with a difficult problem or emotional dilemma, resist the urge to force a resolution. Instead, step back and create space for insight to arise. This can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths and allowing the mind to settle, shifting your attention to the present moment, observing sensations in your body, taking a short walk, or pausing to reconnect with your breath. In this space of stillness, the mind becomes more receptive to intuitive insights that are often obscured by habitual thinking. Just as muddy water clears when left undisturbed, the mind's natural clarity emerges when we stop trying to control it. Cultivating equanimity, balancing the mind in all conditions. Equanimity, upekkha, is essential for integrating this wisdom into daily life. It involves maintaining a balanced mind that neither clings to pleasant experiences nor resists unpleasant ones. In the face of life's ups and downs, equanimity allows you to remain steady, responding with wisdom rather than being tossed around by emotional turbulence. Cultivating equanimity doesn't mean suppressing emotions or becoming indifferent. Instead, it's about staying present with whatever arises without being overwhelmed or consumed by it. When a pleasant thought arises, acknowledge it without clinging. When an unpleasant emotion surfaces, observe it without aversion. To cultivate equanimity in daily life, notice your emotional responses. When you experience joy or frustration, observe how your mind reacts. Pause before reacting. Give yourself a moment of space to choose a skillful response. Remind yourself of impermanence. Recognize that all experiences, whether pleasant or unpleasant, are temporary and subject to change. As equanimity deepens, you develop inner stability that remains unshaken by life's changing circumstances. This balance creates the mental clarity needed to respond with wisdom and compassion. Recognizing insight and letting go, trusting the process. When insights arise, it's natural to feel a sense of excitement or relief. However, clinging to insights can become another form of attachment that obstructs further growth. True wisdom arises when we learn to recognize insights and let them go, allowing space for deeper understanding to unfold. In meditation and daily life, insights often come as flashes of clarity, a sudden realization about the nature of thoughts, emotions, or conditioned patterns. While these insights are valuable, they are stepping stones, not final destinations. Clinging to them can create rigidity, preventing further exploration and growth. When an insight arises, acknowledge it with gratitude, but remain open to deeper understanding. Let go of the need to hold on to that moment of clarity, trusting that wisdom unfolds naturally when the mind remains open and receptive. To practice letting go, acknowledge insights without attachment. Recognize their value without fixating on them. Return to the present moment. Shift your attention back to the immediacy of experience. Remain open to further growth. Trust that deeper understanding will arise when conditions are right. By allowing insights to come and go, you cultivate a mind that is flexible, open, and continuously learning. Integrating these steps into daily life. Integrating these practices into daily life requires consistency and patience. It's not about achieving perfection, but about developing a new relationship with your thoughts over time. Each time you set an intention, observe your thoughts mindfully, create space for insight, cultivate equanimity, and let go of attachment to insights, you deepen your understanding and move closer to true freedom. As these practices become second nature, you experience life with greater clarity and compassion. Thoughts lose their power to define you, emotions lose their grip, and what remains is a spacious awareness that meets life with wisdom and equanimity. Through these simple but profound steps, you bring the timeless wisdom of the Buddha into your everyday experience, transforming how you relate to yourself and the world. Beyond concepts, embracing ultimate freedom. The question, if you're not your thoughts, who's thinking them, leads to one of the most profound insights in Buddhism. At first glance, this question seems to invite an intellectual search for an answer, an effort to identify the hidden thinker behind the stream of thoughts. But the Buddhist teachings make it clear that the ultimate answer lies beyond words and concepts. It cannot be grasped through analysis or logical reasoning, but must be directly experienced through deep, mindful observation of the mind. In the Culamalankya Sutta, the Buddha illustrates this point by remaining silent when asked metaphysical questions about the nature of existence. When a disciple demanded answers about the origin of the universe and the existence of a permanent self, the Buddha responded with noble silence, Arya Tanabhava. This silence was not a refusal to engage, but a powerful teaching in itself, a reminder that certain questions, particularly those that arise from the conceptual mind, cannot be answered through intellectual inquiry. The Buddha understood that attempting to answer such questions would only entangle the mind further in conceptual thinking, pulling it away from the direct experience of reality. Concepts are limited by language and conditioned perception, while the truth of existence, especially the nature of the self, transcends these limitations. When we try to intellectually grasp the nature of the mind or the self, we remain trapped in the realm of thoughts and ideas, far from the actual experience of liberation. The illusion of a permanent self. At the heart of this inquiry is the doctrine of anatta, no self, one of the core teachings of Buddhism. The Buddha taught that what we perceive as a permanent, autonomous self is nothing more than a collection of ever-changing processes, form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, the five aggregates or panchakanda. Each of these aggregates arises and dissolves based on conditions, with no inherent, unchanging self behind them. Yet, due to habitual identification with these processes, we mistakenly believe that there's a solid I orchestrating our thoughts and actions. This illusion fuels attachment, craving, and suffering. But when we observe the mind with deep mindfulness, we see through this illusion. Through direct observation, we begin to notice that thoughts arise spontaneously, triggered by sensory input, memories, emotions, and countless other conditions. They arise, linger briefly, and pass away, much like waves on the surface of the ocean. But when we search for the thinker behind these thoughts, we find only empty processes, not a permanent entity. This realization isn't an abstract philosophical concept, but a direct insight that arises through sustained meditation and mindfulness. It's the moment when the mind sees clearly that there's no solid self controlling the stream of thoughts. Thoughts think themselves, driven by causes and conditions, and the notion of a thinker is just another thought in the stream. Direct experience, the only path to true understanding. The Buddha emphasized that true understanding of anatta does not come through intellectual analysis, but through direct experience. Just as tasting honey is fundamentally different from reading about its sweetness, experiencing the absence of a permanent self is qualitatively different from understanding it conceptually. This direct experience unfolds in moments of deep mindfulness and stillness, when the mind becomes fully present and observes the arising and passing of thoughts without identification. As awareness deepens, the illusion of a separate self begins to dissolve, revealing the profound truth that there's no thinker behind the thoughts, only the ever-changing play of phenomena. In moments of profound clarity, the mind experiences a deep sense of spaciousness and freedom. Without the burden of a solid self to protect or defend, the mind becomes naturally light, compassionate, and at ease. This is the ultimate freedom that arises when we see through the illusion of a permanent self, a freedom that goes beyond mere intellectual understanding and transforms the way we relate to life. letting go of conceptual grasping. One of the greatest obstacles to realizing this freedom is the mind's attachment to concepts and ideas. We are conditioned to seek answers, define experiences, and categorize reality into neat conceptual frameworks. But when it comes to understanding the nature of the self, conceptual thinking becomes a barrier rather than a bridge. The Buddha's silence in the Culamalankya Sutta was a reminder that letting go of conceptual grasping is essential for awakening. It's not that the Buddha was uninterested in these questions, but that he recognized their futility in leading to true liberation. Concepts can point toward the truth, but they can never capture the direct experience of it. To move beyond concepts, the mind must surrender its need to know and control. It must rest in the simplicity of bare awareness, observing thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they arise and pass, without clinging or aversion. In this stillness, the mind gradually loosens its grip on conceptual constructs, allowing the deeper truth of anatta to reveal itself. Freedom beyond thought, the natural state of awareness. When the mind is no longer bound by the illusion of a separate self, what remains is pure awareness, open, spacious, and free. This awareness is not another thought or concept, but the silent witness that has always been present, watching the play of thoughts without attachment. In this state of awareness, freedom is no longer an idea, but a lived reality. The mind no longer needs to grasp for answers or cling to conceptual understanding. Instead, it rests in the natural state of openness and clarity, where thoughts arise and dissolve like waves on the ocean, without disturbing the stillness of awareness. This is the ultimate freedom the Buddha pointed toward, not the absence of thoughts, but freedom from identification with them. It is the realization that there's nothing to cling to, nothing to defend, and no permanent self to protect. What remains is boundless space, where the mind is no longer confined by the limits of concepts and can fully embrace the unfolding of life with wisdom and compassion. When we stop identifying with our thoughts, we unlock the door to true freedom. This freedom doesn't come from eliminating thoughts or forcing the mind to be still. Instead, it arises naturally when we recognize that thoughts are just passing phenomena, temporary events that come and go, like clouds drifting through the sky. But the sky itself, vast and unchanging, remains untouched by the movement of the clouds. This realization changes everything. When you shift your perspective from being entangled in thoughts to observing them with mindful awareness, you create space between yourself and the mental chatter. In this space, there is clarity, stillness, and the capacity to engage with life from a place of wisdom and compassion. Instead of reacting impulsively to every passing thought or emotion, you begin to respond with intention, understanding, and balance. True freedom lies not in suppressing thoughts, but in recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the silent, ever-present awareness that watches them come and go. This awareness is boundless and serene, allowing you to witness the flow of thoughts without attachment or resistance. By anchoring yourself in this spacious awareness, you cultivate inner peace, a peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances, but arises from deep within. As you continue on this journey of mindfulness and self-discovery, you'll notice subtle but profound changes in your life. Stress loses its grip, emotions become less overwhelming, and clarity replaces confusion. You'll find that the more you observe thoughts without identifying with them, the more freedom and peace naturally unfold. Ready to take this journey deeper? Pause, breathe, and observe. Right now, in this very moment, you have the opportunity to witness the ever-changing flow of your thoughts and experience the stillness that lies beyond them. True freedom starts with awareness, and that journey begins now. If you found value in this exploration, I invite you to join me on this path of mindfulness and awakening. Like this video if it resonated with you and helped you gain a new perspective. Subscribe to Zen Mind Journey to continue exploring profound insights that can transform your mind and life. Comment below and share your thoughts. What did you discover as you observed your thoughts today? Your reflections could inspire someone else on their journey. Let's embark on this journey of awareness and liberation together. Each moment of mindful observation brings you closer to the ultimate freedom that lies beyond thought. See you in the next exploration.